Today we're going to talk about what people leave consulting to go and do. It's one of the important factors to consider when you're wondering whether you should join consulting, and something every consultant considers when they're already on the consulting career journey. Does consulting open more opportunities than other career options? Does it make sense to join consulting if you already know that you want to achieve something specific in your career? Are the things you can do after working in consulting things you actually want to do? Welcome back, by the way. I'm Charlie, a consulting senior manager and remote business owner, and my Consultant Explorer channel is to help you be so successful in your early years in management consulting that you are set up for total freedom to do whatever you want to in life. Over the 10 years I've spent in consulting, I've seen lots of people go and do lots of different things, and so I'll tell you today about what I saw. And I'm going to group the things that these consulting leavers went on to do into 4 exit routes. The first will be other consulting things. The second will be things in industry. The third will be starting a company. And the last will be personal development and commitments. Where relevant, I'll give you a sense of how consulting helped them do better in what they went on to do, or that is to say, how their consulting experience accelerated their subsequent success. Okay, so first section, other consulting things. One of the mantras in large consulting firms is, we have so many opportunities to do so many things inside this firm that if anyone is potentially about to resign, we should evaluate what else they could be doing within this firm that they haven't already had the opportunity to do. I saw some people decide that client-facing project work was no longer for them, and that instead an internal role that did work that supported those client-facing consultants was a better fit. Like, for example, creating internal training courses for consultants or supporting the HR team. I also saw people move from a business-focused consulting role to a more technology-focused consulting role, which involved moving from one line of business to another within the same consulting firm and reduced the amount of direct client contact that they had. I also saw people move country to a different office within the same firm. For example, people from the UK wanted to live in America or Australia or Southern Europe, and those internal transitions were relatively pain-free, even though they involve quitting and then being re-employed. But none of that is actually quitting. It's just changing job within the same company. So the other avenue for people who want to do something different, but still want to do something consulting-y, and I saw this avenue frequented quite a lot, it's just jumping to another consulting firm. People find benefit in doing this if they're not being promoted in their current role, or if they want a different leadership team above them. You leave behind a network and credibility, which you have to go and build from scratch all over again. But for some people, the short-term boost in seniority level and pay, and the change in leadership makes it worth it. In my time, I saw a lot of movement between Accenture and the Big Four, for example. And I also saw movement at Accenture both from and into other IT consultancies, some much smaller, which gave those people the experience of working with different sizes of firm and therefore different sizes of project, team and client. But what if you want to move into something non-consulting-y? Because you've got all the consulting experience you ever wanted under your belt. Well, there are plenty of options. Let's cover the things in industry exit route. I saw people jump into senior leadership positions in big corporate firms. For example, into head of and C-suite positions. Generally, these were in the industries they'd worked with while in consulting, so their jump was based on the network of clients they'd built and the credibility they'd earned as a trusted advisor to clients, who became colleagues. In order to be able to jump to these sorts of positions in larger corporate firms, you need to be at least a senior manager, if not a director, on the consulting side. And whilst that's often the second most senior title you can have in consulting, to put that into perspective, if you're promoted quickly because you're brilliant at your job, you can reach senior manager after only 7 years in consulting. By contrast, it's much less likely that you'd ever get to be a head of or on the C-suite in a major corporate industry after only 7 years if you'd worked in that industry from the start, purely because you're not making personal connections with the people who'd hire you into those roles from day one. And that same kind of acceleration is true in your earlier years in consulting too. I saw consultants only 3 or 4 years into their consulting careers move into team management roles in mid-sized tech firms, in partnerships or go-to-market teams, for example. I also saw them move into leadership roles in smaller startups, leading product management or commercial insight teams, for example. They'd all have been managing people who were potentially 10 or 15 years into their careers. That's pretty cool. I also saw mid-level consultants at manager level in consulting move into senior positions in large tech companies like LinkedIn and Salesforce, And actually, I saw some at a less senior level than that command an enormous salary elsewhere, in private equity and in tech specifically, because of the specific tech expertise that they'd developed. They had skills in a technology capability that was very hot topic at the time that they moved, and still is, which meant the demand for their skills drove up the price of salary they were able to ask for to a really quite incredible level. So there's no limit or rule to the type of industry, size of company, or type of job you can have when you leave consulting for an industry job. But I would say that there is a rule of thumb that whatever you jump into, you'll be landing that job at an earlier point in your career than you may have done by working upwards from the inside. I have a video on how to know when it's the right time to leave consulting for an industry job, if you're interested to know more. Here's the link. Okay, the next exit route is starting a company. And by the way, I also have another video on how to know you're ready to leave consulting and start a company, if you're interested in knowing more. Here's that link. I saw a number of people take this exit route, although fewer than those who left for a job in industry, because it takes a certain type of person to have the risk appetite that it takes to start a company. Some left consulting to start their own consulting company, doing the same sorts of projects they'd done in consulting but via their own firm, with their own employees. Mostly, they've been really successful, in large part because of the healthy on-the-job training their career started with, but also because they had both credibility and a starting roster of clients. Some are still working on growing and shaping their company, which takes time and experience, and I'm confident that they'll get there. Of the people who left consulting to start their own consulting company, they were generally all between 4 and 10 years into their career. Others started a company doing something that they were passionate about, but that they'd never worked in before, and they did this in parallel with working in consulting for a short time, because it's largely impossible to start a company and do a great job in consulting all at the same time, given the time commitment on both sides. Some of these companies were product companies, some service companies. In all of these instances, their consulting experience gave them good credibility because it proves a specific kind of work ethic and capability. But it also gave them a foundation of knowledge about how to plan, organise and run a project to achieve objectives. I also have a couple of videos which explain how consulting prepares you really well to work in startup land. If you'd like to know more about that, here are those links. The people who I saw exit consulting to start companies generally have been really successful, with growing customer bases, public profiles, and a great following. Some have found it harder and have moved on to the next startup idea with the lessons that they've learned and additional experience they've gained. And again, I'm confident that they have a bright future ahead. Of the people who left consulting to start a company that isn't a consulting company, they were again generally between 4 and 10 years into their career at the point that they exited. The other thing I saw a number of people do is go independent. And by the way, I cover off the financial opportunity of this in reason 2 in the how to know you're ready to leave and start your own company video that I mentioned earlier. If you want to know more, here's the link again for you. Going independent affords you more choice and flexibility, and that's generally why these people decided to do it. Once they had credible experience, market relevant skills, and confidence in their personal knowledge, they were able to find their own personal clients who wanted them, specifically as individuals, to work on their projects, often alongside other consulting companies. These people generally enjoy an increased wage, a decreased working week in terms of hours, and a choice of when they work versus take time off. And again, the people I saw do this were anywhere between 4 and 10 years into their consulting career. The fourth and final exit route that I saw people take was for personal development and personal commitments. I've seen people leave consulting to pursue an MBA, sometimes because they're keen that that accolade on their CV accelerate their progression within consulting afterwards, but more often because they want to start their own company afterwards. I've actually seen more MBA grads go back into consulting or industry jobs than start companies after their MBA. So I'm not convinced that an MBA really serves the startup purpose, although I have some very talented ex-colleagues who might just prove me wrong after their current MBAs finish. And the MBA grads I've seen go into industry or consulting after their MBA did experience an immediate boost in seniority and pay, although have told me that in the longer term it's not made the hugest amount of difference to their career. Interestingly, in terms of further education as an exit route, I don't think I saw anyone go back to do any form of master's or PhD from consulting. It's only the MBA route that I've seen people take to continue their personal development. And aside from personal development, I've also seen people take up personal commitments as an exit route from consulting. A number of very senior leaders decided to step back and spend more time with their family, and 1 or 2 mid-managers did so too, triggered actually by the additional homeschooling requirements over the COVID lockdown, which was so difficult to cater to alongside a full-time consulting job. On the whole though, rather than exiting for personal commitments, I saw more people take the sabbatical option to take some personal time. And more so now, people take the shared parental leave option too. So that's a rapid rundown of everything that I saw people leave consulting to go and do. There are 4 main exit routes as I see it, from finding another type of role within the consulting space, to jumping into another salaried job in industry, to starting your own company and working for yourself, to stepping out to pursue some personal development and commitments. The key thing to remember, as a friend once told me, is that consulting is an elevator that takes you up really fast all the time you're on it. So that if or when you exit, you're generally higher up than you would have been if you'd worked your way up from the bottom of that new career, via the stairwell, if you will. Hopefully that sparked some ideas for you in terms of what you could do after consulting. Hopefully it's validated that it's the right career choice for you for now. And if you're excited about the opportunities you can see ahead of you, then let me know by clicking the like button. And if you'd like to see what I post next, then definitely subscribe to my channel. Social media links are below if you'd like those, and if you have any questions or comments, then feel free to use the comments section here and I will do my best to answer absolutely everything. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and I wish you all the best with your exploring.